Welcome to Day 8 of Sparktending, a 10-episode mini podcast for you. You know, the one with the heart and the mind and the soul and the hands. Today I'm broadcasting to you live from my car, the executive office suite of choice for entrepreneur mothers whose children have come home from school for the afternoon. So I trust that you will take the cars going by as added ambiance for our time together. Today, I have a perspective to offer from quite a beautiful piece of writing. David Whyte, the Irish poet, describes in his book, Crossing the Unknown Sea, Work as a Pilgrimage of Identity, a time in his life of burnout and exhaustion. Reading it, I recognized something that I hear from moms all the time as a kind of constant state, a crisis in a way, but a crisis that's on kind of a slow simmer, which can last years and become normal. A crisis that gets adjusted to. David Whyte had been overworking for years, leading, running meetings, keeping schedules, being responsible to so many people, operating at speed. He was running an environmental organization, but we could imagine that as a stand-in for the many ways that we juggle all the pieces of a complex life as mothers. To make a long story short, something interrupted his pace, shocked him out of the racing, and sent him hitting the ground hard. And he described falling into this dark place where he could find these bits and pieces of his spirit, his soul, lying in shards around him, forgotten in the dark, left behind. Again, when I read this, I thought of similar descriptions that I've heard from all the moms I've listened to and that I've felt myself at times. Where have those parts of me gone? Where am I? Who am I? I'm so exhausted. For some of us, it's physical exhaustion. For some, it's emotional, creative, spiritual. In the book, David hosted an old friend at his house one day, Brother David, a Catholic priest and a mystic, really, who had mentored David in his youth. He was a trusted advisor. And here I'll just read it directly because it's so beautiful. Brother David, I uttered it in such an old petitionary Catholic way that I almost thought he was going to say, "Yes, my son." But he did not. He turned his face toward me, following the spontaneous note of desperate sincerity, and simply waited. Tell me about exhaustion, I said. He looked at me with an acute, searching, compassionate ferocity for the briefest of moments, as if trying to sum up the entirety of the situation, and without missing a beat, as if he'd been waiting all along to say a life-changing thing to me. He said in both the form of a question and an assertion, "You know that the antidote to exhaustion is not necessarily rest?" The antidote to exhaustion is not necessarily rest, I repeated woodenly, as if I might exhaust myself completely before I even reached the end of the sentence. What is it then? The antidote to exhaustion is wholeheartedness. He looked at me for a wholehearted moment, as if I should fill in the blanks. But I was a blank to be filled at that moment, and though I knew something pivotal had been said, I had not the wherewithal to say anything in reply, so he carried on. You are so tired through and through because a good half of what you do here in this organization has nothing to do with your true powers or the place that you've reached in your life. You're only half here, and half here will kill you after a while. You need something to which you can give your full powers. You know what that is. I don't have to tell you. He didn't have to tell me. Brother David knew I wanted my work to be my poetry. Go on, I said. You're like Rilke's swan in his awkward waddling across the ground. The swan doesn't cure his awkwardness by beating himself on the back, by moving faster, or by trying to organize himself better. He does it by moving toward the elemental water, where he belongs. It is the simple contact with the water that gives him grace and presence. You only have to touch the elemental waters in your own life, and it will transform everything. But you have to let yourself down into those waters from the ground on which you stand, and that can be hard, particularly if you think you might drown. He looked down and read again from his book. And to die, which is the letting go of the ground we stand on and cling to every day. He looked up again, warming to the theme. I was getting a good talking to. This nervously letting yourself down takes courage, and the word courage in English comes from the old French word cœur, heart. You must do something heartfelt, and you must do it soon. Let go of all this effort and let yourself down, however awkwardly, into the waters of the work that you want for yourself. It's all right, to support yourself with something secondary until your work is ripened. But once it's ripened to transparent fullness, it has to be gathered in. You have ripened already, and you are waiting to be brought in. Your exhaustion is a form of inner fermentation. You are beginning, ever so slowly, he hesitated, to rot on the vine. Does this resonate with you, Mama? What are the implications of this? For you, what waters are waiting? What are the elemental waters that represent your true power? As you consider this, be careful not to leave parenting out of your response, because for many of us, because of the trivialization culturally of parenting, this answer, motherhood, is not enough. For some of us, though, mothering as a role and a vocation is a wholehearted life. If that's you, can you claim it again against the greater culture's minimizing as your wholehearted choice? And if there's something else that is your calling and your work, those elemental waters for you, well, what does this mean? In the face of your exhaustion, ask yourself, what are the ways in which I truly need to rest? And you have to give rest to yourself. And it's okay if it takes a month to figure out how to do that, or a year or more, like it did for me, to restore the full ability to rest enough after the initiation into motherhood, or I should say during the initiation, which is ongoing. And then ask, in what ways is my exhaustion a kind of rotting on the vine? And then, friend, begin to step back toward your elemental waters. Use yesterday's episode, No Limits, Baby. Use those questions to help guide you. Integrate all that you find into your daily life in every joyful or peaceful or small or incremental way that you can. Inside yourself, pivot. You can do it. Report your findings in the Facebook group, Tending Sparks. Spread the love using amywalsh.net/spark. Love you, mamas.